Good morning and welcome to the Board of Supervisors meeting for the March 3rd. First thing on our agenda is the adoption of the agenda. Are there any additions or deletions?
Mr. Chair, at this point, there are two things I'd like to ask to be added to the agenda. One, under item D1, after the Vidocq report, be a report from Dr. Green and the Virginia Department of Health on the coronavirus situation, and also the item that's on the Dais, approval of salary for Assistant Commonwealth Attorney, to add to item 14 of the consent agenda.
Were there any other additions or subtractions? Is there a second?
Who made the motion?
I move we accept the agenda as the changes as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next thing on our agenda is the public comment period. Lasts for about 45 minutes, and it's for the public to give any input on items which are on this agenda, but not the subject of a public hearing. Mrs. Mounts, is there anyone signed up for?
Yes, sir. Ann Connolly. Well, I signed up because I didn't know if I'd be allowed to speak when you guys were going over and voting for the item under unfinished business. Okay. But I wanted to address actually the way that my public hearing was handled on February the 18th. If you recall, at a previous hearing in front of the Planning Commission back on January the 8th, my neighbor attended. He had previously signed a waiver on August the 9th. And it was basically a waiver of non-objection to my application for a short-term tourist rental on our adjoining properties. So of course, by the time the application was filed and we had our first public hearing, it was January. And Mr. Wines did not at that point remember. When he reached out and asked about the public hearing, he was told that he had submitted a letter. And he knew he had not submitted a letter, and he didn't. He signed a waiver that I made a part of my application process and submitted. Mrs. Cullors was at that Planning Commission hearing, and although Mr. Wines confirmed in front of the commission that he did in fact sign the waiver and he did not object to my permit, Mrs. Cullors raised the objection at the February 18th public hearing. She did not make her objection known previously to Mr. Widley so that I could address it or be prepared. Mr. Wines wasn't asked to attend so that he could confirm once again. So instead, my public hearing was closed, and on motion of Mrs. Cullors, the vote was continued, so that Mrs. Cullors could then go out into the community and conduct her own private investigation and reach out to my neighbor again, who had already confirmed and signed the waiver. I did want to make mention of what the waiver is, because she mentioned that she felt that he was confused about what he signed and gave the distinct impression that my neighbor was an elderly, confused man who didn't know what he was signing. The waiver is literally 3 sentences, and it says basically, I am aware that the application is being filed. I am aware that our properties, our residences are within 100 feet of each other, and because of this, I asked him to sign the waiver of non-objection. The last line says, I do not object to the issue of the permit. Nowhere in that waiver does Mr. Wines give me any special access or permission or use to his property. And nowhere in that waiver does Mr. Wines give up any of his rights as a property owner to his property. So I was a little taken aback that there would be that much concern over confusion over what he had signed. So then I reached out to Mr. Wines, and he contacted Mrs. Cullors, and as far as I know, confirmed again. In fact, he told me that he called her and set her straight. Those are his words. That is the neighbor that I know, not a confused man that doesn't know what's going on around him. If any of you have ever met Mr. Elwood Wines, he is as sharp as anybody. He is a retired federal employee. He has absolutely no problem standing up and letting know what his opinions and his thoughts are, which is why he attended the public hearing on January the 8th. And he told me as I stood at the podium in front of the commission, you should have reminded me. And I should have. I really should have. It had been 5 months. There was a lot going on in his life, this was not top of mind. So, coming up to the February meeting, all the public was notified again, sign's still in the yard. I contacted him, left him a message and said, we've got one more meeting, you're gonna receive a letter. And he chose not to attend, which is the purpose of a public hearing, is for the public to be heard. And when the public chooses not to attend, they are not heard. What is not supposed to happen is that a public hearing is closed so that a sitting supervisor can then go into the community and make private investigation, basically. Reach out to him. And she stated herself that she would call him. If she couldn't reach him on the phone, she'd see him at IHOP. Or she would reach out to his daughter, who is not even a county resident. And I can't believe that I am the only person that thinks that this is completely unacceptable. The purpose of a public hearing is for people to speak and be heard. And when you're having private phone conversations or talking about it over dinner at IHOP, there is no way for me to readdress. In this case, it turned out in my favor because I know that Mr. Wines had no objection to this, and he told Mrs. Cullors the same thing. But that doesn't mean that in the future, if this is done again, and they come back with a different answer, what is the recourse for the public if our hearing is closed? How do we address it? Do we then go through a 30-day or however long it takes appeal process? Do we start all over and write another check for $500 to the county? This is unacceptable, and it should be addressed and should never be allowed to happen again. This is the whole reason that we wanted a new board of supervisors. This thing of who do you know in Warren County that allows you to get special treatment, it is ridiculous and should not ever be allowed to continue again. So I respectfully ask you to approve my permit. I thank you for your time and attention. Do you have any questions for me?
I don't. Anybody on the board? Any comments? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mrs. Mounts, is anyone else signed up?
No one else has signed up for the agenda.
Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak? Final call. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak?
She has a question on what she can
Just on what the lady
Just what's on the agenda, ma'am.
that she was speaking of.
No, anything that you want to talk about that's on their agenda.
Oh, okay. Yes, I would.
If you would like to speak, you're more than welcome.
Teacher Morrison Winkler. I reside in Charlottesville, Virginia, but spend a great deal of my time here at Bowling Green Country Club. The last time I spoke at the previous meeting, about 2 weeks ago, I was not prepared to say anything, but I did come a little bit more prepared this time, I think. I've spoken to a good number of you on the board concerning the Front Royal Country Club or Golf Club remaining open. There seemed to be a lot of balls still in the air about that, whether it seems that the big issue is whether the gifting of the club by that family was it deeded as a gift, or was it actually just a lease? Have we actually, has the county actually spent money in legal fees to investigate that?
Mr. Chair, I can answer that question. We are being defended by the title insurance company that sold us the title policy for the property. So the defense is.
So the county itself has not actually spent anything, okay, because I was led to believe we had. So that's in their hands now, determining whether this is actually leased to Warren County or if it was gifted to the county. Okay. One thing that was met with a little objection when I voiced that this seemed as though it was competition for those of us who are private owners, is that this is not competition. Well, let me read something to you. Competition is rivalry between two companies selling similar products or services. Direct competitors are companies who offer the same product and services at the same, directed at the same market or customer base. To me, that is exactly what Front Royal Golf Club is doing when it comes to the relationship with the multiple golf courses in this county. So that to me seems like not a good idea. When Front Royal has had to cut their budget by letting go of people who were working for the tourism department, because that's where Warren County really gets a lot of their money, and it's very important. But then you're going to turn around in a saturated market and spend money on a golf course. It does not jive, in my opinion. So you have a lot of major issues. Your infrastructure, your water and sewer, your roads. Speaking of roads, has anyone driven out to Rockland lately? You know, we have Shenandoah and golf course, and then we have Bowling Green. And we have a pretty large community out there. And let me assure you, those roads haven't been touched in quite a while, and they're very narrow. I'm sure Mr. Stanley can attest to that, because he has to drive out that way. That's something. And then we have, there at Fairgrounds Road, you have a lot of industry coming in that way. So that's something that we need to think about as well. So there are a lot of areas that you could be spending your money on rather than keeping up a golf course. I'll cite just one other thing, you know, as far as needs in the community, and that would be your Department of Social Services, which was near and dear to my parents' heart. Year before last, we raised $2,500 for social services and another $2,500 for the animal shelter here in Warren County. And that's important to us. And we were trying to give back to the community there. So then again, we're not fighting, but we're competing against another entity. I don't want to get into too much of that. I'd like to read something to you if I could. I did a little research last night, and this was on private enterprise versus government competition, freedom and responsibility, education and enterprise. It was written by those people. I won't read all of it, but I want to get to the main points, which I think backs up what a number of us have been saying. This is thoughts on a free market economy. Private enterprise is defined as a business or industry that is managed by independent companies or private individuals rather than by the state. The money invested in private enterprise is private money risked by individuals who stand to make money if the enterprise is successful or stand to lose their investment should the enterprise be unsuccessful. Government makes no money, nor has the means of gaining any funds beyond what is taken from the citizens through various taxation policies. The elected government officials devise methods of securing funding through taxation and then are expected to fund the government's responsibility to protect the individual rights and provide for the safety of its citizens. I'm trying not to overwhelm you with words here. When governments compete with private enterprise, the playing field is skewed. Since government operates on money confiscated from its citizens through taxation, the government actually has no skin in the game. government can choose to spend money on projects that will likely be an unprofitable venture, and in this case is beyond the pale, because after all, it is not their money. Government employees rarely have the expertise to research, design, or manage private businesses, and their motivation for making the business profitable is minimal. In society, there is a need for government and for private enterprise. What is exceedingly important is to know the purpose for each activity and to hold elected government officials to their level of responsibility. Then the other article, this was written by the Libertas Institute, actually on a related to something in Salt Lake City, but it parallels, I think, our situation. This was published in the Salt Lake Tribune. Golf courses, theaters, pools, recreational centers, the list of government enterprises that are built for the sake of recreation and government goes on and on. The problem is that each of these are examples of government unfairly competing against the private market, using taxpayer dollars in order to provide non-essential services to the public. I don't think I need, well, it says here, a golf course is a great example of a non-essential service that is frequently also provided for the private market. Local governments directly compete against private providers, typically using taxpayer dollars to subsidize their struggling enterprise. Too often, local elected officials and groups of overly eager residents lose the perspective between the needs which should be provided for and the wants of the community. I'm not going to go on any further, I know that can get boring. So my point is that exactly, that I understand totally that this was gifted. This was not something that Warren County willfully went into, that we're going to go in here and build a golf course and compete against the other private sector. But I think we need to really look at this very, very closely and vote no on either having a management company come in or to have the county continue to have this as a golf course. It makes no sense. It's fine. A gentleman spoke last time stating, well, we have parks and we have walking trails and soccer fields which generate no money. That's true, but they take phenomenally less money to maintain than a golf course, and it can be utilized by a much wider segment of the population. So those are my arguments, and I would implore you to either two things: to not engage in this contract, number one, proposal, and two, to, if at all possible, absolutely close this golf course because it is draining the county of very needed funds for other very necessary projects. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate you speaking your mind. Is there anyone else? Yes, sir.
And, speak out on short of this. What was on the agenda, but let's see if we can. I'm Henry Linger, and I live on Marshall Street here in Front Royal. And I'm also part of the Golf Course Advisory Committee. I was newly appointed at the end of the year last year. I certainly hope that the board will really consider the history associated with this golf course. It's one of the earliest golf courses built in Virginia. The Conservation Civilian Group built it in 1938. And the Carson family also donated this. And anybody who's been in the county for a long time knows the Carsons did a lot for our county. And I'm not positive, but I've been talking to people in the community, and also I understand that part of the reason why when we had a pool out there was the Carsons had one of their sons died in the river, and just wanted to make sure the youth in Warren County had some place to have recreation. Secondly, as New Direction, the management group that's put a proposal out, I think they've got an excellent reputation with having their golf course in Fredericksburg, Virginia. They also already have the junior PGA started in that area, and we have had no interest here with all the golf courses in Warren County. Nobody's really catered to the youth, or even to maybe a homemaker or something. And New Direction has a lot of ideas, and they have the personnel to market the golf course. And that wouldn't be a big difference. The situation now is running a course at the very least cost possible. There's no money for personnel or funds to even advertise at all, because it is probably the most affordable golf course maybe in our country, but probably in Virginia. It's really, I'm living on a fixed income, so it also is helpful for me that I could go play golf for $9. That was really nice, and I think that helps a lot of people in the county who don't have higher income or in a retired situation, or it gives us an opportunity to be able to go out and play golf. The potential is just tremendous, and New Directions put together the proposal, and they've done this in Fredericksburg. The other thing with New Direction is we do have the cap on how much our spending is going to be, and that's for the first 3 years, and there's potential after that negotiating where there could hopefully be some profit there that we could share in the future. That hasn't been, I don't know that that's been discussed, but I know formally that hasn't been discussed with New Direction, but I know they see that potential here or they wouldn't do it. You know, we are right there at the corridor there with 66, and the group there just sees tremendous potential in the golf club, and also using that part of the river. You know, I hate for us to give up on that part of the river, because that's just upstream from the power dam, which means you have deep water in the river there. People in the 70s, I can remember seeing people water skiing there and playing tennis and swimming. Well, we don't have a golf, but it was a very popular area for people to go, and that's just the potential it has if a group manages it. And I just, would feel bad that we would do away with this much history for Warren County, and I know we're not there really wanting to compete with other courses, but Front Royal Golf Club was here first by a long time, and those competitors chose to come here, chose to do that investment already. The golf course was there first. And again, I would ask that we give this, I think we should give them a 3-year chance there. We'll cap the loss. I believe probably with the money that was lost last year from reinvesting in the course, this will cover 3 years worth of that much cost, I believe, their proposal. And again, there won't be any hidden costs. If something drastic happens at the course, New Direction will have to take care of it. So that will definitely, again, we'll cap how much it's going to cost. And I think it'll give it a chance for the golf course to actually see more of its full potential. And with that, I just ask for, I hope you'll support the Golf Advisory Board, and vote and let us keep our golf course, our historic golf course here in Warren County. Thank you.
Thank you for voicing your opinion. Is there anyone else in the audience that'd like to speak? Mr. Harper?
James Harper, 3658 Rockland Road in Front Royal. I'd like just to follow up on the golf course issue. Last year I made a suggestion to the Board of Supervisors, and I don't know if Mr. Carter and Mr. Fox and Mr. Stanley remember, but I suggested making the Front Royal Country Club into an executive golf course. An executive course is older people, young kids. It's where you start to learn to play. You're golfing with a 9-iron and a putter, essentially. Each hole is about 100 yards. You make from the clubhouse up there to where the main part of the course is, the 5 holes there, to make that into an executive course. And on the other side, where the clubhouse and the pool used to be, put some things like for kids in there, that batting cages, putt-putt golf courses, things to generate revenue. And I don't know if anybody's looked at it or even thought about it, but seems like spending $100,000 to have somebody manage it. I don't know, it seems like a lot of money to me, but I just wanted to suggest another alternative to increase, to keep the golf course, but to make it an executive course, so young kids that start out to play, they learn on a course as opposed to going to Bowling Green. It would actually help Bowling Green and Shenandoah. Kids that learn to play, get enthusiastic about it, but they could go out there and learn to play on something, a small course that's 100 yards, each hole is 100 yards, something like that. That's just a suggestion. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Harper. Is there anybody else like to speak? Mr. Gabbard?
Good morning, Paul Gabbard, 1221 Avenue Drive. I don't think the mic is working.
It's not.
Okay.
Just talk loud.
I agree with everybody who just spoke on that, on some degree. The golf course was gifted. It was given for free. Back in the day, it was a good golf course. I didn't live here at the time, but sure, it was a good golf course. It was the only one. So it had to be good. It's not that good a golf course anymore. To spend money, $100,000 a year for someone to management, to me is absurd. It doesn't make money now. It doesn't bring in an income. It's not a profit. Not that many people play it. Sure, it's a cheap golf course. But to put $100,000 into it for a management company, that to me, that's just absurd. If it's not played enough now to keep it going without the county having to put money into it, to have to pay a company to come in here and say, oh, we'll do this, we'll do that, we'll do this, we'll do that. I'll do it for $100,000. Give it to me.
So will I.
That's about what this whole thing looks like. Sure, it sounds good that this company's going to come in here and do all this stuff, but is this county going to take? Is the people in this county going to take advantage of what they say they're going to do? And I don't believe that they can do what they're going to say they're going to do. They're not going to build the golf course up. They're not going to bring any more money to the golf course. They're not going to attract any people from Fairfax or further on up from us. The only people who play it are the people who live here. And spending $100,000 for someone to management, in my opinion, is just ridiculous. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I have a question. Do I need to come?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. My question is in the, I don't know how much you can divulge, but in the contract that's been proposed by Mr. Bird's company, are they held to account, like he said that they would make certain improvements, but is that cast in stone? Would he have to make those improvements? Or is this a suggestion that he's making so that at the end of maybe of those 3 years, if no improvements have been made, and maybe the course is in worse condition because they haven't brought in enough money. So my question is it in the contract that he has to make certain improvements?
Mr. Stanley, would you like to, or Mr. Hammond, would you like to answer that?
Yeah, the contract provides that the golf course has to be maintained to its current standard. It does not require that improvements be made.
Okay, well then, that speaks for itself. And another thing that I would like to say in response to James, your dad will, is that Bowling Green has partnered with Nike Kids Golf. We are bringing in multiple clinics. We have almost, I don't know if I would say cornered the market, but we have multiple children's and youth programs that are actually interstate and in-state and out-of-state that are already signed up with us. And a special program teaching kids, and primarily children, how to play golf in a different perspective, approach, and where they're taught first on the green and then you back up a little bit. So we already have a youth program starting in earnest very this year. And it was started last year, but even more so this year. So that's in the works.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to speak about anything on the agenda? Yes, sir.
Thank you. Again, I'm Henry Linger from 911 Marshall Street. One thing I wanted to mention about the offer from New Direction is that they're going to be taking care of the maintenance of the club too, and that's a big part. And one thing I wanted to mention last year is that we put of course, the sprinkler heads were broken. A whole lot of them was. The course was really in poor condition, I'd say, at the end of 2018. But last year we had to do what we did just to save the course, which was get all the sprinklers working. And if you have actually played that golf course in the last 6 months, you would find that it's in excellent condition. Certainly one person couldn't take care of it by themselves. There's a whole lot more to a golf course than maybe a lot of people understand, but that is to run it and to maintain a course is expensive. And that's, again, where we feel that and there's not money that we can advertise and really campaign to market this course. And that's what New Direction brings in. And they put a cap on our cost. Again, I encourage you to save this historic site. It's a big part of Warren County, of our history. And I hope we keep it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak on anything on the agenda? Final call. The agenda public comment period is now closed. Next on our agenda is our reports. Mr. Carter, I believe you're going to talk about the Virginia Department of Transportation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, board members. The following report for today's meeting from Warren County. Under maintenance, we've completed the slope repair and the stabilization on 638 Halsville Road. This month, we began brush cutting operations on the 603 section of Halsville. We plan to complete that this month. We also completed brush cutting on Route 677. We've opened pipes on 601 and 604. We've cleaned the spillways on 609, 735, 612, 635, and 619 after the last high water event. We've done grading and stone applications on the various non-hard surface routes, We continue that every month. And we will be doing some shoulder repair operations on Route 613 and 637 this month. We repaired potholes and mobilized for one weather event, and we will continue to repair potholes as they're reported this month. Hopefully, we don't have any more weather events, but this time of year, they're generally not as severe, although we have experienced some pretty significant storms in this month of March. Under board issues, the rebar at Indian Hollow Bridge, I spoke with Supervisor Colors this morning about that. We sent a crew out there on the week of the 16th. For whatever reason, they couldn't find the marked rebar, so Supervisor Colors wants me to ride with her in her area. Next week, we're going to go out there, and I'll have the bridge superintendent meet us there. Signal timing on Reliance Road and 522. Traffic operations is monitoring on some Friday evenings. I expect to get that report back pretty shortly. Something that is not on your monthly report that I feel like I need to advise the board on. The Route 658 Rockland Railroad crossing over Bridge. There has been significant work done in the design phase of that. The grant was for about $15.5 million. Okay. After borings and right-of-way considerations and so forth, that estimate has now gone to $21.8 million. Okay. The other $6.3 million we are searching now to see where it can be come up with. We don't have any idea at this particular point. Felt like the board should know that. The initial add date for that project is in 2023. Okay, with its completion, construction completion in 2025. So what's caused the increase in this is that when we were doing the borings and so forth, we found some sinkholes in the area out there which we cannot fill in. And we have to build retaining walls on the fill sides of that. And also there's an additional track being added in which we have to expand the length of the bridge. So all of those things contribute to the increased cost of the project. I'll keep the board apprised as we find out, where the additional funding might possibly come from.
How much time do you need for that? I mean, is there any time frame?
Well, there's no time frame, and, we may have to adjust the schedule, but there's no time frame. Obviously we're looking at all of the available sources out there to make up the difference. It'll probably be several months before we, have an answer to that.
Thanks. Just let us know everything.
Question, Mr. Chairman.
Absolutely.
May I ask a question, Mr. Carson?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, so that's my district, and a lot of folks have contacted me because they get stuck when the trains just stop.
Yes,
Up at the inland port. Has there been any effort to ask the inland port to create maybe a roundabout, something that could potentially alleviate that issue with the transportation? It happens both on Rockland Road and it happens on Fairground. And I've had numerous calls from residents, and I myself was on my way to church and could not get to church last Sunday 2 weeks ago because there was a train that just stopped. They stopped. And it's for unknown length of time. You have no idea how long you're going to be there.
Yes, ma'am, I know. And unfortunately, it's my understanding, and I have not talked with the railroad companies yet, that the number of trains is being reduced by making the existing trains longer, okay, which tends to hold up the crossing. One thing is that the railroad companies own the property that their right-of-ways are. We have no jurisdiction over that. They have worked with us, and I believe, if memory serves correct, they have some type of notification system if it's going to be longer than a certain time. And I'll need to go back and research this to get you further information.
I would appreciate that, because I think that if we partner potentially with the inland port and ask for some kind of consideration, instead of spending $21 million on an overpass, perhaps that might be the best solution for the community.
Well,
So I just wanted to inquire as to whether that had been done.
I think due to time restrictions, especially for emergency vehicle response, that the overpass is the ultimate.
Is the ultimate, but I'd like, can we, since this seems like a good opportunity to investigate it
But
though.
we might be able to lessen the impact. I don't think that even with the alternatives that were talked about, you know, we talked about placing preemptive warning signs out on 522 to alert people that the crossing was closed so they could seek another route.
Unfortunately, there isn't another route
Well, it is,
for
but
either of
it's
those.
significantly.
Yeah,
longer.
it's very inconvenient.
So,
Okay.
but
Thank you.
I'll research the other things and get back to you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to be involved, so if you need me, I'll go with you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Well,
Is there any possibility of the railroad pitching in some on this $6 million increase?
I don't know. Like I said, we haven't explored all of the avenues yet. This just came to my attention yesterday. That's why it's not in your written report. But I didn't feel like I needed to verbally tell you that it's happening. Because I know there's a lot of interest. I know there's a lot of inconvenience about that railroad crossing and others being blocked. As a matter of fact, I have a meeting with the new county sheriff next week to discuss that. So,
I'd like to be at that meeting, Mr. Park. Can you give me?
well, I'm going at his invitation. So.
Okay. Well, I'll call him up and tell him I'd like to be part of it. Thank you.
I've not had a chance to meet him and talk about general cooperation. We've always had a good cooperation with the sheriff's departments in all of our counties, and this would be my opportunity to meet him and see what his expectations are.
We've had some, the sheriff and I have had some discussions about his road, which is Mary Shady's Lane, and he has in times either going in or coming out, he can't get through. And also Aspie Station. Aspie Station this past weekend was closed all weekend long. Well, excuse me, all day long.
Yeah, it was closed because of a train that broke down.
I question that because I just don't understand if Norfolk Southern or whoever it is that's running the train, they can't get another engine there to pull it out of the way. I just don't understand it. So I know that Mr. Childress is working with them, and I know that you're working with them, and I know the discussions are out there. We need to solve this, at least solve it to the point to where we're not blocking people from getting into their houses and kids having to offload off of the school buses and inconveniences like that are hurting our community. People are yelling, and the Board of Supervisors is listening to them, and we're trying to help get it fixed.
Understood. Again, I have to reemphasize, we are limited, okay, because it's not our property or right of way.
I understand, sir. I appreciate it, and I appreciate you trying to help.
Bicyclists on Browntown Road, our traffic engineering will review to see if there's warning signage that we can, that's acceptable to put up for motorists. However, bicyclists have the right to every state maintained road in the state. And there's additional legislation being proposed now, which gives them even more protection from vehicles. So, but our traffic engineering folks will be here next week, and we're going to ride Browntown Road and see if what they recommend.
I appreciate that. It was a question that I got from a resident, and I understand the concern, especially a bicycle that's going up a grade, traffic behind it gets slowed up, impatience, and people are going around, and Browntown Road is not a road you can do a lot of extra maneuvering like that without being a major issue. So, but I understand the bicyclists have the right to be there, and so working that out but I have to do my due diligence and pass along the questions that get asked of me, so I appreciate your input on that.
There was some concern about trucks on Coffin Mill Road. Traffic engineering went out and did a count for 48 hours. Out of 421 vehicles, there were only 2 that were 3-axle trucks and no tractor trailers. It's not a road that lends itself to tractor trailers. Okay, there are some sharp curves and things which make it difficult. So that's, want to pass that information on.
Thank you.
Happy Creek Road, also not on here. Happy Creek Road project is going to be advertised in January of 2021. Okay, it's in its final stages of design and right of way now. At the intersection of 661 and 624, we did go out and place additional warning signs for the stop and for the intersection, and we placed delineators up around the turn to try and hold the trucks off of the ditch line. Don't know if they're still up. Okay, we put, what we did, we put collapsible delineators. If they hit them, they fall, they collapse over. So we're trying to keep an eye on that now. That is limited, really, there shouldn't be trucks down there. And we have warning signs from everywhere, but sometimes GPS supersedes the warning signs.
Supervisor Fox, you have a question?
The one thing that you might make note of is the bicyclists are not only using the Browntown Road, but they seem to go to Browntown, then they cut over and use the Bentonville Road. So you may, whatever you do on the Browntown Road, you may want to consider doing on the Bentonville Road also.
All right.
Did you find that to be the case?
I think the grade difference, they don't, it's not as steep, so I'm not getting the complaints from the people that travel that road because it's not as steep as.
A couple of bad curves on
It's bad. I love, been a long time since I've ridden a bike, but I wouldn't do it on Browntown Road. It's just dangerous.
One other thing that is not on your report, we're getting ready to advertise a new position that's called Area Incident Management Coordinator. And that position will be reported to me at the residency, and his function will be fast clearance on the interstate, which will be I-81 through our residency as well as the 14 miles of I-66 to our residency. And 81, as you all know, has received a tremendous amount of attention. It's gotten additional funding and so forth. There's going to be a lot of projects that are simultaneously ongoing on that road. And it's going to slow traffic down through these projects. So it's imperative that we get the lanes open from any accident as soon as possible. It always has been, but it's even more imperative now. So this person's responsibility is that function, coordinating with Virginia State Police, local law enforcement, emergency services, and our contractors out there on scene, as well as the towing community, to be sure that those travel lanes get open right away. It's more important to get the travel lanes open than it is to recover the accident. Now that means that we may have our loader out there and push a tractor trailer over in the ditch and come back that night when traffic's not so heavy. We have done that on several occasions. So just for your informational purposes, that position's being posted in the next 30 days. We are also, after many years of requests by the fire department, the Virginia State Police, and the Sheriff's Department, we're getting ready to put 10th mile markers on, actually it'll be 2 10th mile markers on I-66 with our 14 miles through Warren County. We've appropriated the funds, and the signs are being ordered, And as soon as they come in, we'll start placing those. There'll be a different sign than what you've seen. The new standard is much larger than the old standard, so we'll replace the existing mile markers that are out there, and then every 2/10 of a mile marker. Every 2/10 of a mile, there will be another marker. For instance, if it's 3 mile marker, it'll be 3.2, 3.4, 3.6, etc. East and west on I-66. All right, final item. Because we have had a mild winter, there are some funds which are projected to come back to each residency in each area headquarters. And we're going to be using those funds. We've already put together a plan for maintenance activities, tree removal, brush cutting, ditching operations, shoulder repairs, things that we have gotten behind on for the last couple of years. And we're hoping to have a big catch-up between now and the 1st of July. We're going to be using a lot of contractors because we don't have existing forces to spend the money that's coming our way and keep up with our routine. And I'm done.
I just hope that you haven't jinxed us.
I'm sorry.
I hope you haven't jinxed us for big snow coming up.
Well, I hope you're right, sir. I hope you're right, too.
Somebody's in the Barber Almanac talking about one 16th or 17th of March. So we'll see. And I remember in my lifetime, the biggest snow we ever had was in March, and had 46 inches.
Yeah, we've had some big ones in March, and that's why I said this is projected to come our way.
Well, knock on wood, please. I say knock on wood. There you go.
I had a question.
Yes, ma'am.
One thing that we didn't discuss this morning for the meeting, on my email I sent you, I had several people contact me asking if the little reflector strips that have been put on 340, if we could get those. Those are great. When it's a rainy night, they really help.
I talked to our traffic engineering people about that. They're getting me an estimate now. They're placed every 80 feet. I figure we got about a little over 3 miles of it. We'll have about 206 of them, I think. I calculated yesterday, and I'm waiting now to see what the cost of that.
Okay, I appreciate it. They are a big benefit. The other thing was just a question. When you do determination of where you put tar and chip versus plant mix, is that used for the volume of traffic on the road to help determine that?
It's used on what the existing pavement is. Now, if it's a real rusty concept, we use prime. People call it tar and chip. It's prime and seal. Okay, and we use different size stones starting at the first layer, then we go up 2, 3 layers, sometimes 4 layers. Okay, under rural rustic, that's the state requirement. State code. We have to stay within the right of way. We try to maintain 18 feet of travel surface, and that's the type of surface that we're allowed to put on it. When we use prime and seal or slurry, okay, or latex, okay, or plant mix, depends on the condition that the existing roadway is in. And what we try to do, if it's existing roadway, if we can get a few more years of life out of it by using a slurry mix, okay, or a prime and seal, we do that. If we're not going to get any more life out of it, then we may go ahead and put a plant mix on it, where we can extend it out. We have to maintain roughly 65% ride, what's considered ride verification on our secondary road. Okay, that's our objective.
My question was, I see plant mix used on some roads, and then last year, I know Mr. Fox had to hear a lot of grief about the fact when you did resurface 619, it was what I call tar and chip. And I just wondered, it seemed like that's such a high volume road.
It is, but the existing pavement was on such that we could get another 5 or 6 years out of it, okay, for $3 a square yard versus $12 a square yard for planting.
Right, and I figured cost was part of that, but I didn't know if cost was always part of that factor, or if once it gets over a certain amount of volume, that you had to go, if you couldn't use the cost factor, you had to go with plant mix.
No, it generally, we actually latex 81 sometimes. The driving factor is how much life we can extend the pavement that's there.
Thank you.
Any other questions or concerns? I know I have one, but I want to give everybody else the opportunity. You said that there's a possibility of some funds coming back to the community.
Yes.
Can I throw Happy Creek Road at the railroad crossing there at Dismal Hollow, where the lady had her son had an accident going across that and totaled her car? And I know that you had sent a letter to her that basically said that Vidocq was not responsible for the accident, wasn't responsible for anything, but I believe that we can be somewhat aware and put some reflectors on that, so when that intersection juts, it's seen either at night or even in the daytime, and when it's raining, we put reflectors in so it can be seen. I just don't think that it's a safe intersection.
And you're absolutely right. That project, as I said, is due to be did in January of 2024, which goes from Dismal Hollow Road all the way up into Detroit. And it's a $10 million project. It addresses that railroad crossing, but we won't be doing the work on the railroad crossing because it is their right of way. Okay, so we will go up to the crossing, they will do the work and bill us on their right of way, and then we will pick up on the other side and go to the end of the project. We cannot place reflectors on their right of way.
Can you place reflectors before you get to it?
Yes, we
On the
have,
other side?
we do have signage, we have the road painted, okay? But we have to stop at their right of way. Now, I know specifically where this accident occurred. We've had several accidents there before, and it is a dangerous situation. And we have met with the railroad company out there on several occasions about filling in that drop-off with asphalt. And we've had some semi-commitments, but it has never occurred yet. Again, it's something that they have to do, we cannot do it.
That doesn't help that family.
I understand, sir, and if there was something we could do, we would have done it.
Yes, sir, I believe that you would. I just wanted to bring that up.
I will be happy to contact the railroad company again and see if they're willing to do something on an interim basis until the project is complete. I can't make a guarantee.
I appreciate you giving us that opportunity. Thank you. I have no more questions. Anybody else have any concerns, questions?
Thank you, Mr. Carter.
Thank you, Mr. Carter. I appreciate
Thank
it. Next on our agenda is the reports for our board members.
It's the health department.
Oh, is it?
I think Mr.
Mr.
Stanley, did
Mr.
you put in
Stanley, you
there?
want to give yours? Okay.
Dr. Green's going to give a presentation.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Some cards for Emily. I am not Mitchell Wolf. I am Colin Green. I'm the director of the Lord Fairfax Health District, Virginia Department of Health. And I have shamelessly thieved Dr. Wolf's slides. He works for the CDC in Atlanta. I want to talk to you today about coronavirus, the new coronavirus, and what its status is now, and answer any questions you may have. And I'm prepared to come back at any point over the course of this outbreak, which may become a pandemic, in case you have more questions. So, all right, what did I do wrong? All right, never mind. Forget the slides. The slide deck is over there if anybody wants one. So, the coronavirus that we are experiencing now, what is it? It's an infection. It's a respiratory infection. It's spread a lot like a cold or the flu. It is a problem. It is not a catastrophe. It's not Ebola. It's not the medieval plague. It's not smallpox. It's not going to depopulate the world, at least not unless it turns a whole lot worse than what we've seen. It actually acts a whole lot like the flu. What's scary about it is it's new. So we don't know everything about it. We don't know the exact nature of the natural course of the disease. We don't know how bad it is in which groups and which groups are at highest risk. And we don't know what it's going to be like 6 months from now. We do know what we've seen thus far. And what we've seen thus far, it's acting, although it's not a flu virus, there we go, it's acting a lot like a flu virus. So coronavirus has actually, the group coronavirus has actually been around for a long time. There are about 300 different viruses that can cause colds in humans, and 4 of them are these guys right here. 4 of the well-known coronavirus types, don't worry about the names. The fact about coronavirus that's of interest is that it has some subgroups that cause much worse disease. So if you look at the lower bullet, the SARS outbreak from the early 2000s, it also happened in East Asia. The Middle East respiratory syndrome, you've probably heard about, that still happens from time to time. People going to the Hajj in Saudi Arabia turn up with that. And then the SARS-CoV-2, that's the one we're talking about right now. Again, don't worry about that name. It's been called coronavirus disease 19 because that's the year it showed up. So you may hear COVID-19 or you may just hear it called coronavirus. So the coronavirus family, not just this last disease, it causes colds, upper respiratory infection. Older people get a little bit worse disease. People with chronic disease get a little worse disease. But for the most part, it's a cold. Runny nose, maybe some headache, hacky cough, sore throat, maybe a fever, low-grade fever, and just kind of that general unwell feeling we call malaise in medicine. It spreads through respiratory droplets, so somebody who has a cold, they sneeze or they cough. And if you've ever seen a photograph of a sneeze, it spreads this cloud of little liquid droplets that goes anywhere up to 6 feet out from the sneezer. Somebody walks through that cloud and inhales it. Or those droplets dry out and then they float down and settle on a surface. Someone touches that surface, touches their eyes or nose or mouth, they get infected. So that's how most colds and flu are spread, and we believe that's how this new coronavirus spreads as well. Again, it hadn't been around to be tested to be absolutely sure, but that's how we think it spreads. So it showed up in Wuhan in China, which is the east central part of China. It's an industrial town. It was thought to be connected to an animal market. Not really clear, not really crucial whether or not. The main thing is travelers exported it, and cases started turning up in other parts of China, then in other parts of East Asia, Southeast Asia, and then in other parts of the world. 31st of January, the president put a stop to non-citizens coming in from China. The intent of that, and the intent of a lot of the other things that have been done, is not to make sure the disease never comes here, because we're not going to be able to do that, but to slow it down until we can learn a little bit more about it and perhaps know how to deal with it better. So how's it spread? Again, we're not 100% sure. We are sure that it's spread through coughs and sneezes. So if I have it and I cough and I sneeze and I don't do this like I'm supposed to, it goes out into the air, and anybody that walks through that cloud can pick it up. Probably anybody that picks it up off of a surface on their hands and then touches their face can also infect themselves. The new coronavirus, the symptoms are a little more severe. So the fever is higher. You get 101, 102, 103 fever, not the 99.6, 99.8 fever you get with a cold. Primarily a cough, not so much the runny nose and stuffy head. It's a cough, and it's a deep cough, the kind that when your child gets one, you start to worry a little bit. In many cases, it turns into a pneumonia. And in the most severe cases, you'll end up with shortness of breath. Some of those people need to go to the hospital. Incubation period from when you get infected to when you start having symptoms, anywhere from 2 to 14 days. That's the source of the 14-day isolation. So if someone has been in China, might have been exposed, they come back to the United States, they come to Front Royal where they live, we ask them to stay home for 14 days and to talk to us if they get sick. If 14 days goes by, well done, thank you. If 14 days goes by and they're not sick, they're off the hook. We're not absolutely sure about the total range of illness. We know it can make people very sick. We know it can result in death. Probably there's a whole lot of people that get this coronavirus that just get a cold or something mild. There's even suspicion that in children, they may have it and not have a lot of symptoms at all. And again, complications, pneumonia, respiratory failure, multi-system organ failure, and the next one that they didn't write on there is death. The death rate from this particular infection is also not clear. From Chinese data, it looks like about 2% of people that get this disease die from it. That's assuming that the Chinese data has identified everybody with the disease, which it probably hasn't. If you look at South Korean data, it's more like 0.4%, which is getting a little closer to an American flu outbreak. Personally, I'd be probably more inclined to trust the data coming out of South Korea than out of mainland China, but that's just an opinion. Time will tell. So what do we do to prevent and treat it? Same things we do during flu season and cold season. Wash your hands frequently. Soap and water. Okay, you gotta use soap. Gotta use water. If you're in the bathroom and you want to be really proper, you rinse your hands, you dry them with a towel, you use a towel to turn the faucet off, throw it away. You can even, and I do this, use a towel to open the door. Mostly for the people that use the toilet and don't bother to wash their hands is the reason I do that. But in this season, using a towel on the bathroom door handle is not a bad thing. Now you don't have to use a towel on the door handle over there necessarily, but wash your hands frequently. If you don't have access to soap and water, use an alcohol-based hand sanitizer. Good idea to have that around a lot. Probably that's one thing we can do sooner rather than later is make sure hand sanitizer is readily available. And it needs to be alcohol-based. Try not to touch your eyes and nose and mouth. A lot of us touch our face naturally. I do it. It requires some mental attention to not do it. But if I picked up germs right here and then I do this, I just put it in my mouth. I may well get sick from it. If someone's sick, don't hang around them. And most importantly, if you're sick, stay home. Okay? Don't come to work. Don't be a tough guy. Oh, I would come to work. I'm never sick. Yeah, you come to work and you're doing a great job, meanwhile you make half the office sick. So if you're sick, stay home. And in this case, stay home for 24 hours without a fever. Don't go to the market. Get someone else to shop for you. You can skip church that week. God still loves you. You need to stay away from other people if you're sick. Cover your cough or sneeze with a tissue, throw it away, and wash your hands. If you don't, the crook of your elbow works great. And you really do have to push your face into your elbow so that it all goes into your jacket or your sleeve. And then clean and disinfect things frequently. So I've had my hands all over this lectern right here. You probably want to wipe it down. Right now, there are no specific treatment. There's no specific vaccine for this disease. I will tell you that because it's kin to the SARS and the MERS vaccine or infection, there are some products that can be tested. the National Institute of Health, a guy named Anthony Fauci, some of my old friends at Walter Reed Army Institute of Research, they're all working on it. How long is it going to be till there's a vaccine? Optimists say 6 months. My bet's probably a year or more. So eventually we can come up with one, but it has to be tested in animals, it has to be tested in humans to make sure it's safe, and then it can be tested on the general public. There are a lot of compounds that are on the shelf that have been tried as antivirals that may be effective against this particular infection. Have to be tested. Those might be available a little bit sooner. They won't be cures, but they might decrease the severity of the disease. Okay. Next few months, you may see some of those coming out. But right now, all we have is supportive care. Cold medications, Tylenol for fever, rest at home. Someone gets really sick, they go to the hospital, and we give them supportive care there. And by the way, everything I said about coronavirus, it all applies to flu, too. This is just a pitch from the CDC. Avoid close contact. If people are sick, try not to touch your face. Wash your hands. This is important. The worst thing that can happen right now is for everybody to panic. You can look at the stock market last week and get a good look at that. Now, it rebounded nicely yesterday, but this is not Ebola. This is not the plague. And unless this virus takes a southward turn and gets a lot worse sometime very soon, it's not going to be like that. If it continues on its present course, we're really looking at a second flu season. That's still serious, but it's not a disaster. If you want good information, I can tell you 2 places to look right now, and you don't have to memorize any of these URLs. All you have to do is type coronavirus and CDC, Charlie Delta Charlie, into your web browser, and you will get the CDC site, and it will have more information than you ever want to need, and it's nicely organized, so if you're a lay person, you can pick out things in plain English. The other place you can go is Virginia Department of Health. So again, coronavirus, VDH, Victor David Hotel. Okay, type that in, and you'll get the Virginia Department of Health page, same things, and lots of links to the CDC's page. Talked about the preventive actions. Talked about seek medical care if you're sick, especially if you're having any problem with shortness of breath. And then travel. Don't travel to hot spots. And don't travel to East Asia right now. Don't travel to Northern Italy right now. Can you travel in the United States? Sure. If you're planning on going to Florida to see somebody, no reason not to do that. Live your life. Just be aware, and be aware of what you need to do to avoid getting sick. So I'll give you a little bit of an update. These are the CDC's data from last week. They're already out of date. So right now, worldwide, there have been 91,000 confirmed cases of this coronavirus, about 3,100 deaths. Most of them are still in mainland China, but a few more now. There have been about 5,000 cases that have turned up in South Korea. These are cases now, not deaths. 2,000 in northern Italy, 1,500 in Iran, 270 in Japan, and then a bunch of countries, including the United States, have between 100 and 200 cases that have been identified. So it is spreading a little bit outside of China right now. And that began last week, which is what kind of freaked out the stock market.
Could you compare that to the regular flu?
Pardon?
Could you compare the numbers to the
Yes,
flu?
you're a mind reader. So I want to put this into perspective for you. What if I told you that there were, instead of 91,000 cases, there were 32 million cases of this disease? 32 million cases, 310 hospitalizations, and 18,000 deaths. Everybody'd be pretty upset, wouldn't they? I just described the flu season we've just gone through in the United States alone. So let's try to put it in perspective. Now granted, we're not done with coronavirus. We're not sure what it's going to do. We're really kind of scared of what happens if it gets loose in India or East Africa or someplace that doesn't have a really established public health system. But right now, this in the whole world is nowhere near what our flu season has just done to us here. So it's not time for panic. One other thing. Anybody here bought a box of surgical masks? Good. Okay. It's reasonable to buy one box and put it on the shelf And if somebody gets sick with this, or gets sick with the flu for that matter, they can wear the mask while they're at home, because a surgical mask only stops germs going this way. It doesn't stop them coming this way. So if you're sick and you're coughing, it'll stop your cough, just like coughing in your sleep. But if you're well, and you walk through that cloud that I just produced and I didn't cover my mouth, you're still going to get sick. So all those people you see wearing the surgical masks, they're kidding themselves. Okay. As far as community preparation, the health department, besides presenting to the local governments, we're also in touch with the local healthcare system, Valley Health. I'm going to talk to a couple of their folks this afternoon. We're talking about what to do if things get worse. We're talking about a lot of ifs. Right now, we're not there yet. Right now, we need people to be aware of the basic precautions to not get sick, the same ones we used during the flu season. If we get a vaccine, we'll let you know. But you've heard the flu numbers. You've heard these numbers, so let me make a pitch next year for getting your flu shot in October. And by the way, if you haven't had one this year, it's still not too late. We've got probably 6 more weeks of the flu season left. What are your questions?
You said in China that the mortality rate was at 2%. In South Korea it was at 0.4%. We also heard, I think, that Iran, I think they were talking about 4%, but I think that comes into play as far as how many cases are actually reported.
It depends on the accuracy of the data. So the question was, what about Iran? What about China, the death rates? All of it depends on the denominator. So right now in China, we've got about 3,000 deaths and about 90,000 cases. So that's, if you take that, that's actually like 3.3%. But are there really only 90,000 cases? I'll give them their death rate. I'm going to assume they can count bodies okay. But as far as the cases, what about the ones that just get a cold and they don't know they have it? How many of them are there? There might be 10 million cases in China, for all we know, instead of the 90,000, at which point the death rate becomes very, very small. So when you, and Iran, the accuracy of the data coming out of Iran, they admitted their deaths. They admitted they'd have 50 or 60 deaths, and they were still claiming they only had 100 cases. Now all of a sudden they've admitted to 1,500. So I'm not sure what the correct data are from Iran. Any number of reasons not to travel to some of these places, but the coronavirus is certainly one of them.
I have a question. Is it possible that this has actually existed for a while and the community was not identified as a coronavirus? And the cases in Oregon, I think it was, where they had no known contact with anyone, they had traveled and ended up with the coronavirus.
Lots of things are possible. It is possible that this has been around for a while. It's possible there was a new mutation that was what we call more virulent, causing more serious disease. We're still looking into what happened in Oregon. One thing I did point out, the people that have the worst outcomes thus far from what we've seen, you're looking at older men. People over 60, and especially males. That's coming out of China, that data. Now, what happened with the Chinese population may not necessarily be the same thing as happened with the United States population or even the South Korean population. But it looks like, fortunately, this is a good thing, it looks like it's not causing severe disease in little children, which the flu does. Mostly older folks right now. The bad news is, in Oregon, that was an adult care center, so it was a building full of elderly people. A little bit scary when it gets loose in there, we'll have to see.
Well, there was also a school worker.
Pardon?
There was a school worker
Right.
that had
Right.
contracted it.
Right, and there'll come a question if this disease does become widespread in the United States. When is it appropriate to go to school? When is it appropriate to cancel a church service? Again, we're not to that point yet. The children don't get that badly affected by it, but the children bring it home to grandma who does. So it's still something to think about, but I don't think we're to that point yet. And we'll talk to local governments and the local healthcare system about it if we get to that point. The other thing is to stay alert. Stay alert, keep informed, but look at cdc.gov or the Department of Health, or if you're interested outside the United States, look at the World Health Organization. and then stop. Okay, don't watch the talking heads on TV. Seriously, some of them are good, some of them are not so good. Some of them are experts on China, but they're not experts on public health. And as soon as they start talking about health, you go, wait a minute, that's not right. So I really wouldn't stay glued to the news on this. Take a look at the CDC's website once a day, or the Department of Health's website once a day. Get a section that you're comfortable with. Grab one of the flyers that were left over there. That's probably what you need to do. And then go on and live your life. And don't walk around with surgical mask. Anything else?
What percentage of key personnel are assigned to our county?
What percentage of?
Of your key personnel are assigned to our county, do you know?
I have, if I were fully staffed, I'd have 78 employees. And count. Well, again, some of us are we have part duty here. I have duty in all 6 municipalities. But 8 to 10.
8 to 10?
Typically, yeah.
And in our emergency health response plan, like, do we do an education, or how does that work? Like an education for supervisors, so we understand what the health response or incident response plans are through your agency?
Yeah, so if we actually have a real emergency, we'll set up a team and use what's called the incident command system. And it won't just be Lord Fairfax, it'll be the entire state. So you'll have people coming up from Richmond too, it won't be just us. But the local governments will be brought into the picture very quickly. So you'll have the health department, you'll have Valley Health, you'll have people from Richmond, you'll probably have federal agents as well if it's a national problem.
Okay.
So the answer to your question, there's not one specific, hey, if this happens, we get together and tell you this. I don't know that it's written down quite that specifically.
And is there an education program for supervisors or that we could attend that might include us in the education for the incident response for our communities?
Not one that I'm aware of right
Not-
now.
okay.
Right now, educate yourselves on the virus and what we do know and what we don't know about it.
Well, not just the virus, but,
Oh, you mean in
emergency-
general?
Yeah, in general, right, yeah.
I'm sorry.
Mr.
Okay.
Chairman, if I can interject, so that's part of our emergency management program, and we had to sit down with Walt, the chairman, here last month.
Okay.
Rick Farrell is our local deputy that handles under the chief in the fire and rescue department. And we can try to set something up, and Rick could come in maybe to a board work session, just talk about what he does. But
Yeah.
the chair is ultimately, he sits at the table on those.
Okay.
And it is basically in charge at that point.
I just wanted to make sure that as supervisors, we're educated in the event of an emergency and what our response plans are so that we understand what's available to us and those types of things. I think it's very important that we understand how we're going to react in the event. I'm not concerned about the corona, to be honest, but other events that might require that.
We do have a manual, and I'll be happy to share that, and we could get Rick Farrell in.
That'd be great.
Anytime.
Thank you.
Yeah, and my emergency planner is a fellow named Matt Cloud. He's new in the position, but he would also be involved.
That would be wonderful.
I had one question, if you don't mind. As a former school nurse, I remember back with the early 2000s with SARS, we had lots of trainings and things that we went to get us up to snuff on what to do if it did hit the school system. Is that something that you're working with our local nurses? I know what the protocol used to be, and I'm assuming it's probably pretty much the same. If a child had a fever of 100, they were supposed to be excluded from school and that so forth, but parents send them, give them a dose of Tylenol in the morning, and then you deal with them all day. So are we headed in that direction of a little more education for the nurses that are in school systems?
Yeah, the short answer is yes. The first step was a letter that we put out actually directly to the school nurses in each school district, or a senior school nurse in each district, just with general instructions. But more specifics, we'll let you know more specifics as they come out. Right now, do what you do during flu season. Because, again, looking at the child, you won't be able to tell exactly what germ they have. Realistically, it's probably a cold or the flu right now. By the way, there have been no identified proven cases of this new coronavirus in Virginia to date. Doesn't mean there aren't any there, but we haven't detected any. none in Maryland, I believe none in DC, so none in this area. The nearest one I think is in New Jersey right now. They'll get here eventually, they just haven't yet.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And again, handouts off to the side, and I'll hang out in the hallway if anybody has any questions. Don't want to further disrupt the meeting.
Anything additional from Mr. Stanley?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Ham, do you have anything this morning
No report.
from the board members? Mr. Carter?
I'm good.
Mrs. Oates?
The only thing that I would like to remind the community is that the thermal shelter, which is our homeless shelter locally, all the volunteers provide a source of coverage for homeless folks at night, and that's currently going on. Right now it's at Virginia Hills Church, and I know that they could use some help in terms of volunteers, and so if you are so moved to do something like that, you can contact them and ask, what kinds of needs they have. That's all.
Mrs. Carter?
Attended a lot of meetings other than just budget meetings. On February 19th, Browntown, there was a meeting of residents at Browntown Community Center. They're talking about trying to make Browntown a historical area. A lot of good information there on that. February 20th, I attended the Northern Virginia Regional Commission meeting. That's a group of surrounding counties, Clark, Page, Shenandoah, Frederick, City of Winchester. And I had no idea what that committee was about, and I'm still in the learning process, but they're doing a lot of good things to bring businesses and so forth here. February 21st, attended an EDA Asset Committee meeting. Mr. Harold ran a very informative meeting. February 25th, the fire chiefs meeting where we discussed training needs and equipment. February 28th, another EDA meeting, and then February 28th, I also attended a fundraiser that the Phoenix program did, and wish it had been a little better attended, but it was a good day to do that, and I rode over the roads in my area so that if I had any questions for Mr. Carter, and that's what I've done this last couple of weeks.
Mr. Fox?
Along with Ms. Carter, I attended the building committee meeting, and we discussed many of the operational and maintenance issues and capital improvements that are ongoing. And one of them is the trash compactor site on Howesville Road. The preliminary and design work is now begun on that, and that'll be ongoing. That's all I have.
Thank you. I had attended the EDA meeting on the 26th. Also on the 26th, did a joint town and county tourism meeting. It turned out to be very good. A lot of positive things came out of it, and a lot of action items for the members of the board there. I've met a whole bunch this last week with constituents voicing opinions about all of the things that we've been talking about today. I don't want to go into them individually, it'd just take too long. On the 28th, we had an EDA asset meeting, and also on that afternoon, I met with a fellow supervisor to talk about some stuff as well. On the 2nd, met with a former government employee, and now he's a constituent, very concerned about what's happening with our county and our town. And also met with Good Shepherd Evangelistic Lutheran Church about the trolley and bus system for the town and county tourism board. So it's been a very exciting week with us, and if we don't have anything else, we'll move on through our agenda. And now we're going to go into the unfinished business. First part of the next thing on our agenda is the lease agreement for Kubota RTV D902 for Warren County Parks and Recreation Maintenance Division. Caitlin Jordan.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and board members. On February 18, 2020, a public hearing was held regarding the Parks and Recreation Department's Maintenance Division request to enter into a 5-year lease for the Kubota RTV D902 from Valley Equipment Company. The board had several questions, and since that hearing, I've been able to speak with Mr. Kresge from the Maintenance Division to answer some of those questions. One of the questions the board had was, why are we requesting to lease the utility vehicle as opposed to purchasing the utility vehicle? The total purchase cost is $16,133.49. The Maintenance Division does not have that in their budget right now to pay that up front. And as a way to prevent having to ask the county to front that cost, the idea was that you could pay in monthly installments. Also, there is an option to purchase the utility vehicle at the end of that 5-year lease for a fair market value. So the maintenance department believed that was a comparable option to purchasing. The other question that was asked was if the maintenance costs were included in the lease amount. It is not. So regardless of whether the maintenance division purchases or leases the utility vehicle, the county will have to cover the cost of maintenance. I will be happy to answer any additional questions the board may have. In addition, Mr. Kresge is here to answer any questions that you have as well.
Any questions from the board?
Well, I do. I looked at this agreement, and I'm not sure what a fair market price would be at the end of 5 years, but these pieces of equipment usually maintain their value pretty well. So I did the math, and if I did it correctly, the difference is about $67 from $202.05 to lease it to $269 a month. If we were doing if we're going to do a monthly payout to lease it, it would make more sense to me to put the $67 there, and at the end of the year, in 5 years, you paid for it, because it's $12,123 for lease for that 5 years. If they come up and say the fair market value is $6,000, that's over your $16,000. So to me, it would just make sense to pay the $67 extra and own it.
If I may, I can defer that question to Mr. Kresge, as he was involved in the conversations with the equipment company.
I mean, I agree with you. I mean, it's fine with me. I mean, I'm okay either way.
Has there been an agreement between the Parks and Rec and the Kubota, the people that are trying to lease this sort to you, to see how much just a straight buyout would be?
Yeah, I mean, I can do that. I can check it and see what it would be to buy it. You know, the payment to buy it.
Mr. Chairman, I would prefer we take a look at what the equipment actually costs, and I'd rather see us buy it than rent it out myself. I have confidence in that equipment that if it's Kubota, it'll last a long time once we own it.
So are you asking to find out what a cost would be to just buy it out? And then,
What kind of place do we get?
and then who's going to be purchasing that, Parks and Recreation or county?
County.
We're one and the same.
Okay, I understand that. Just want to make sure which bucket it's coming from.
And Mr. Chairman, Brad and I did have a conversation before the meeting started. Brad, specifically, I was asked about the end of lease value versus purchase price.
I spoke with the rep and he said that they base it on fair market value of a unit with 2,500 hours on it. So if we only put 500 hours on it, they still base the fair market value on a unit with 5 years old with 2,500 hours on it. So if we only put 500 on it, like you said, it could be worth more. So that could be a point where we would maybe trade it in, not turn it in, but you could trade it in on another one and get more value out of it.
I personally, I mean, you know, I've got a farm, and I've got a tractor that we use every year. I hope I'm not jinxing anything, that was bought in the 70s.
Right.
It still makes hay, so, I mean, if this thing is taking more care of it,
Right.
it should last long past 5 years.
But I would check on it and see what the buy would be just straight out.
Yeah, I mean, if we're gonna be making monthly payments towards a lease, it's not like you have to come up with $16,000 in a lump sum, we can do, that's how I pay for my tractor. So,
I'll entertain a motion.
I move that we table this for future consideration.
I second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is the management and lease agreements with New Direction Golf Management Corporation for the Front Royal Golf Club. Mr. Stanley?
Mr. Chairman, I don't know whether you need me to read the entire agreement here, but I'll go ahead and start. June 2017, Warren County issued a request for proposals seeking proposals from qualified individuals or businesses to lease and manage Front Royal Golf Club located at 902 Country Club Road in Front Royal, Virginia. The county has owned and operated the club since 2005, but as with many localities, significant budget cuts have occurred since the recession. While it is the primary goal of the county to retain as many core services as possible, such as public safety and infrastructure maintenance, we also realize the history, beauty, and value of the course to the community. Given those factors, the county would prefer to retain the golf course as an amenity for residents via different management while refocusing the efforts on the core county services. Since the time the original RFP was issued, the county has released 4 additional RFPs in an effort to find an individual or business that both the management experience and the financial capabilities take over the course operations. The most recent RFP was issued September of 2019, which resulted in the submittal of 1 proposal for New Direction Golf Corporation, or New Direction. New Direction has extensive experience in operation and maintenance of golf courses and currently runs the gauntlet in Stafford County under a situation that's very similar to Warren County's. The New Direction proposal outlines a variety of options to improve the course and grow the game of golf for the entire community. The Virginia Code provides that the county had to have a public hearing on the request, which it had, and the board subsequently postponed discussion of the item until today's meeting. With that, either I or Ms. Ross would be happy to answer any questions.
I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I've met with a couple of the local golf courses in light of the information that's come out. And so my personal belief is that government is intended to provide essential services to the community, and golf is not one of those. We are in essence competing with I asked a gentleman yesterday, what if the community decided they wanted a government bowling alley? It's the same thing. So I would make a motion at this point that we deny this request, or that we deny this proposal at this time.
Do we have a second?
I second.
All those in favor? Roll call.
Roll call.
Roll call,
Discussion.
please.
Discussion?
Do we have discussion?
No, I mean, I understand the competition with public-private. We tried to make a go of this for many, many years. I felt like this was the last shot that we would have to maybe make it a go. I don't know, by closing Front Royal, I'm not sure how much that's going to help the existing ones that stay. I have a feeling that in several years there may be another one that goes by the wayside. But there again, it's competition. The other thing too, I'm going to support the motion primarily because things are still kind of up in the air with the title company, and they're doing their research there too. So I don't think it would be prudent to go into this agreement and then the title company feels that it would revert back to the Carson heirs. I would hope that if golf's not an option, that we could look at it for some other type of future passive part that would not cost near the amount of money that we're putting into it right now. So that's all I have.
Thank you. We have a motion on the floor. We have a second. All those in favor?
Roll call.
Or roll call.
Mr. Carter?
Aye.
Ms. Oates? Mr. Chairman?
Aye.
Ms. Colors?
Aye.
Mr. Fox?
Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is for the conditional use permit 2019-12-01. Brian and Ann Connolly request for a short-term tourist rental. Matt Weedling.
That's correct. Yes, this property is located at 64 Rocky Lane in South River Magisterial District, identified on tax map 23B, section 1 is lot 5, is not in a subdivision. The postponement at the public hearing was due to concerns from Ms. Colors regarding the granting of the waiver of 63 feet setback in lieu of the 100-foot required setback from dwelling to dwelling. Mr. Fox also requested that planning staff do some research into the history of these waivers that have been granted for this particular use to determine if we would need to reevaluate the supplemental regulations at the Planning Commission level. On review of this short-term tourist rentals, we've counted 25 that have been approved by the board since 2012 when the initial amendment to our ordinance was made. 3 of those were granted a waiver for the dwelling-to-dwelling setback requirement, one in 2016 for a 50-foot setback to the adjacent property owner. That adjacent property owner did submit a letter to the county voicing his consent. The use was never established at that property and it has since been sold and the CUP is expired. In 2019, we had 2 of these. Ms. Barbara Durad in the Skyland Estate subdivision requested a 40-foot setback. This particular property, she was the primary property owner of the house next door and was the applicant for the conditional use permit. That CUP is currently active. We also received an application from Lyric Underwood at 39 Parkside Road requiring a 92-foot setback. The adjacent property owner did submit a letter of consent for that. This is a unique short-term tourist rental in that it's a nonprofit by donation for hikers at the AT, and the property owners actually live on site and stay there when the hikers come to stay at their property. These waivers were all granted for site-specific conditions of each of these CUPs. The county now currently has 18 currently active CUPs for short-term tourist rentals. The others are either inactive or expired for various reasons. There are currently 14 active short-term tourist rentals that were grandfathered because they were established prior to April 17, 2012. And there are currently 4 applications going through this process, which includes Mr. and Mrs. Connolly's CUP. And of those, only Mr. and Mrs. Connolly's require the setback waiver. I'll forego reading these conditions since they were stated at the on record at the public hearing and provided to you in your agenda item. I'll mention that the supplementary regulations have allowed planning staff to vet a number of the requests for short-term tourist rentals. We've had a few people looking into that, and because either they've gotten denial requests from the POA as they've contacted the POA prior to the application process, or they do not meet the setback requirements. They've chosen not to go forward with the application process. So the supplementary regulations are working in that regard for planning staff to vet some of these prior to coming to the Planning Commission. I'd be glad to answer any questions, and Mr. and Mrs. Connolly are here also, as you saw earlier.
Any questions?
I guess I have just one question. Do we or do we not have a waiver from the next door neighbor?
Well, I actually talked to him, and I'd like to address some of Ms. Connolly's it wouldn't have mattered to me if I had never met Mr. Lyons. I would have still felt the obligation to clarify. So special treatment was not even a thought process for me. My process was to make sure of his understanding for me and to also protect you, because if he would address his family in a manner that said, well, I don't know, I didn't understand this or that, then they could have possibly come back and said they didn't feel comfortable with the process. And I wanted it to move forward smoothly. So my concern was twofold. I did talk with Mr. Wines, and we talked. He has no problem with it. He would rather have short-term than have a neighbor he didn't like to deal with long-term. So I'm very comfortable with moving this forward, and maybe I do my due diligence too far. I can't apologize for that, though, because it's just what I feel like I have to do. But it was a twofold. It was not trying to put any disparaging marks against anybody. If I'm going to vote on something, I have to know that I have done my best to make the right decision for everybody. So
Mr. Lyons.
he's fine with it.
I'm ready to entertain a motion unless we go to discussion.
So I move that the Board of Supervisors approve the conditional use permit request of Brian and Ann Connolly for a short-term tourist rental with the conditions as recommended by the Planning Commission and staff.
We have a motion, we have a second by Mr. Fox. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion approved. Now going to move into our new business and our consent agenda. Are there any items that need to be pulled for further discussion?
I would like to pull number 2, 3, 4, and 9. We are not committing ourselves to that dollar amount. We're just giving permission for them.
That's a very good question, one that Jason and I have been talking through the last few days since the packet was put together. I'll let him speak. I've also got Mr. Elwell here from Northwestern as well. Turn that to Jason.
Their attorney sent me an email saying that this is not a request that the Warren County fund this, and that they have sufficient funds available to do this, and that this is not a situation where the county's being asked to co-sign for it in some way.
So does that mean the county's not obligated?
That's what this email says. I don't have any documents about this, and I looked at the Virginia Code and what a community service board is. It's not immediately clear that it's a separate political subdivision, but their attorney has indicated that they are not seeking for the county to co-sign this. So that's all the information I have.
If I could ask Mr. Elwell to come up, Mike, if you come up. And I would also add, I was around when, I guess the mid-90s when y'all built your headquarters on Chrysler Road. I do not believe the county was part of that acquisition at that time.
Yeah, I don't think so. Good morning, Mr. Chair, board members. My name is Mike Elwell. I'm the Executive Director of Northwestern Community Services. If I could just give you a little bit of background information about Northwestern, this is clearly a financial initiative for us. We currently lease 4 buildings in Frederick County, 2 in the city of Winchester and 2 in Frederick County that are costing us over $17,000 a month in lease payments. So for us to purchase a building in Frederick County through our bridge loan, through our current bank, BB&T, and through a permanent loan through U.S. Department of Agriculture will save us about $4,000 a month. So it truly is a financial incentive for us to go in this direction. And I have copies if you're interested in terms of our summary of our last year's financial audit, which was an excellent audit. The reality is Northwestern is a very stable financial organization. Since my tenure here over the last 4 years, we have increased our budget of over $4 million from $14 million to almost $6 million to almost $20 million, and then hired an additional 80 staff members, and still been in the positive realm in terms of our finances and our fees and revenues. So we are a very stable financially stable organization. What our attorney tells us is that this code requires us to get your authorization to go forward with a loan. It's been in the statute for many years, requires your approval, does not bind you to any kind of commitment in debt terms of us. In addition to that, our bank and the USDA do not look to you for being part of this loan agreement, so it appears to be very clear in terms of that.
Any questions, concerns?
Well, if Mr. Ham feels that I think you can understand, I don't want to do anything like this with our past history without knowing, and Mr. Ham saying that.
Well,
we
okay, I
definitely
want to
have.
be clear on what Mr. Ham's saying here.
Cover running at you, I'm sorry.
I am not giving you the independent opinion that we're not liable for this debt, but you do have in writing from their attorney saying you're not, and you just had the representation from their executive director that you're not. And so that's what Mr. Ham's saying.
Okay. I want to clarify.
Any additional comment on item number 2? Item number 3 is the authorization to submit application.
Excuse me.
Yes, sir.
How are you doing this? Should we go ahead and approve the
Consent.
consent agenda, excluding those items, and then take each one of these items individually? Like we've already heard from item 2, we still need to make a motion and vote it up or down.
Let's make a motion and do it correctly.
I make a motion that we adopt the consent agenda with the exclusions of items 2, 3, 4, and 9.
Second.
We have a second. All those in favor, say aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. Now we can take the items individually. Number 2 has already been done. Do we need to vote on that?
Yes. I move that the Board of Supervisors adopt the proposed concurring resolution regarding financing by the Northwestern Community Services Board.
Second.
All those approved?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Item 2 is approved. Now discussion on the authorization to submit application to the 2019 Assistance to the Firefighters Grant Program. Brandon?
On March 13, 2020, Warren County Department of Fire and Rescue Services is planning on submitting an application to FEMA's Assistant to Firefighters Grant Program. Fiscal year 2019 is one of 3 grant programs that constitute the Department of Homeland Security's FEMA's focus on enhancing the safety of public and firefighters with respect to fire and fire-related hazards. The AFG program accomplishes this by providing financial assistance directly to eligible fire departments, non-affiliated emergency medical service organizations, and state fire training academies for critical training and equipment. The AFG program represents one part of a comprehensive set of measures authorized by Congress to implement and implemented by the Department of Homeland Security. Among the 5 basic Homeland Security missions noted in the DHS Quadrennial Homeland Security Review, the AFG program supports the goal of strengthening national preparedness and resilience. This year's grant round will provide approximately $315 million for the program, and approximately 2,500 awards are expected to be made. The projected period of performance start date is May 1st, 2020, with the projected period of performance end date of April 30th, 2021. I will note the issuance of the notice of funding opportunity came about 2.5 months late, so those dates may not actually work out for them. Projects are expected to meet AFG's objective of providing critically needed resources that equip and train emergency personnel and recognize standards, enhance operational efficiencies, foster interoperability, and support community resilience. Warren County Fire and Rescue is planning to apply for funding for 105 sets of self-contained breathing apparatus, or SCBA. This request will allow for the replacement of all SCBA air packs, SCBA cylinders, and SCBA face masks for all Warren County volunteer fire and rescue companies. The SCBA equipment is currently being utilized, has reached its end of life, and is in desperate need of replacement. The companies that will be included in this application are Front Royal, Rivermont, South Warren, Linden, Shenandoah Shores, Shenandoah Farms, Portsmouth, North Warren, and Warren County. Given that the request is being submitted to cover 9 departments, the application is being submitted as a regional application. Regional applications require that a memorandum of understanding be executed between the host agency and each individual company. A draft MOU has been attached for your review. The MOU was presented to the Fire Chiefs Advisory Committee at its February 10th meeting, and the committee was in favor of moving forward with the application. The host agency will have to agree to maintain and be responsible for the awarded items for the life of the grant period. This will include annual flow testing, hydrostatic testing of cylinders, maintenance, and repairs as necessary. Training for the new equipment will be conducted by the vendor. In each department will be responsible for having 2 train the trainers events, which will be required to and will be required to continue to submit their NFIRS reporting as required for grant purposes. The total estimated cost to purchase the 105 sets of SCBA is $872,213. A copy of that quote has been included in your packet for your review. With the regional application having a local cost share percentage of 15%, Warren County would be applying for approximately $446, with the remaining $113,767 being the responsibility of the county. Funding for the local cost share will come from the funding that Warren County has received from the state through the Fire Programs Fund, which at the end of FY 2019 had a balance of approximately $406,000. Virginia Code Section 38.2-401 does stipulate what those funds can be used for. And if you have any questions specific to that, I will pass them off to Fire Marshal Myatico. If the county is successful in being awarded funding for the purchase of the equipment, a grant agreement will have to be presented to the board for acceptance so that members are made aware of the exact amount of local funding that will be required. So if we are awarded funding in a few months, this will come back to you for final approval. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions you have. We also have Chief Mabey and Fire Marshal Myatico.
It is on, it's just not working.
I don't think there's any, there's no audio.
I'll talk up. The reason I pulled this was I just feel like anything with this dollar amount, grant-wise or otherwise, shouldn't just flow through on a consent agenda. We need to make the public aware of it. And this is not a frivolous thing that they want. This is a necessity. These are air packs that they have to go in to do their jobs. The ones they have are expiring or have already expired. The hope is that get this grant. I hope to get this grant. I'm not trying to hold up this grant at all. What the public needs to realize is it's slim that you might get this grant. So we all need to do grant prayer. But in the dollar amount that it's going to mean to us to get these. So that was my point.
That equals 113.
No.
113,767.
That's
If we get the grant, that's what we have.
If not, we're looking at right around $1 million.
Right.
And they do have a company that is working with you on payment plans and so forth, but it's still there that that's a large dollar amount if we don't get a grant. And that's what I wanted the citizens to be aware of. And when you put it on the consent agenda, it just goes through and that understanding is not there. So that's why.
Maybe a clarification, if you will. And if the grant doesn't go through, this would come back to our board before we would approve it in its final stage anyway.
Yes, sir, understood.
And
Ready to entertain a motion? Mark?
For Supervisor Fox's clarification, that's right. So if we don't get the grant, we asked our Chiefs Advisory Committee as well as Supervisor Colors in that meeting the what-if question. What if we don't get the grant? While we're hopeful, and we're trying to do that prayer, that grant dance per se, so we started looking at financing options versus coming back to the board asking for roughly $1 million in purchasing. What if we finance that amount of money? So preliminary numbers, if we look at a 7-year finance at a 3.5% interest rate, it's roughly $140,000 a year. We have asked to see that financing number at a 10-year spread. Ultimately, our goal is to attempt to get the financing in a manner to where we would be able to proceed with the project without asking this board for any additional funds by using our special projects money, cost recovery funds, and savings throughout the budget. So that's what we are trying to set ourselves up for.
7 years and what? How much a year?
3.5%.
7 years, 3.5% interest, roughly $140,000.
you'll have this package.
I'll have that in the training center, and I'll go over that. So we have asked for that to look at that at a 10-year spread, as well as that quote is from the vendor and their financer. So we very well may have other options that can beat that interest rate as well. So preliminary, our goal is to drive that number down to where we can afford that without asking this body for additional funds.
What's the lifespan of the units?
So theoretically, while we say expired, the NFPA standard gives it a 15-year lifespan. However, these self-contained breathing apparatus have a lifetime warranty on them, and as long as we are the original owner of that self-contained breathing apparatus, it is that warranty lasts. But NFPA standard, when we hit that 15-year threshold, we just become out of compliance with that NFPA standard. It still could be a usable pack, still breathable, still operational. We're outside of the scope of that standard. The biggest problem we have now across the board in our volunteer systems is, one, we're outside of that NFPA standard, but we're finding it not cost effective for repairs, or the company is using used parts to make the repairs. That's how old they are. So that's why we're trying to proceed with the project.
Ms. Rawson, I kind of missed what you were saying. When do they expect that the grant will be awarded? You said something about 2.5 months past this.
Yeah, their start date right now is looking at May 1st. But with them issuing the notice of funding opportunity over 2 months late, I don't know if that's going to be possible. The performance start date, which when we would hopefully have an agreement that we could technically move on as soon as the board approved it.
And just to clarify too, that the hope would be, if the grant does not come through, that you work out some type of finance agreement, and finance costs will be paid through the cost recovery, and the cost recovery is the money that we get from ambulance transportation.
That's correct.
Right. So it would be more or less self-contained. It wouldn't necessarily come out of the general fund. It could come out, and then it says in here, which I don't think Ms. Rawson read all of it, but cost recovery funds have to go to specific items according to code, training, equipment, things like that.
Two fund balances. One would be our fire programs funds, then the other would be cost recovery. Right now, we're spending cost recovery funds. As an example, we did a financial agreement with our Life Pack 15s. That expires in 3 years. So theoretically, that money would free up out of cost recovery that's currently earmarked for the purchase of that. So we'll talk about it in the training center, I'm sure. So theoretically, you're right. What we would do is we would be able to self-contain that out of our current budget and not ask for an increase of contributions from the board or a tax increase per se. We would not ask for that.
So all we're approving today is just for you to be able to seek out the grant.
To be able to hit send.
Right.
When we actually, if we got the grant or if we decide to purchase on our own, that would have to come back to the board for approval.
For future approvals. Well, I make the motion that we.
Wait, one more question. Can we reinsert the units that we have now at all, or are they basically?
No, there's no restart value. Some of the cylinders are in date in compliance, but the new cylinders we're slated to get, they would not be compatible, so we are upgrading those cylinders to a quick fit connection. When we come back to the board, we'll show you what we have now compared to what we're targetedly going to get and show you the comparison differences. And not only can we not resort them, there's really no trade-in value associated with it.
How are you going to make sure this don't happen again? Or is there a way where you won't have this problem 5 years down the road or 10 years down the road where you got to spend another $1 million?
So this is an unfortunate circumstance when you look at a combination system like we have modeled here in Warren County. This is not a problem specific to Warren County. Several of our neighboring jurisdictions have just identified this problem. Ultimately, when you have a volunteer agency that is responsible for the cost to repair, replace, and upgrade these devices, as we see a change in the dynamics of a volunteer system, it really just takes the cost mechanism out. They can't afford it. Based off of declining fundraising numbers, those types of activities, and the cost of the technology now with the new standards, it really makes this not achievable at the volunteer level. So the premise of this system is this would be just one added measure for the county's fire and rescue system to absorb that cost from the volunteer system. So the county fire and rescue department would become responsible for that particular piece of equipment. No more, no less than we have with the life packs on the medic units, some of the medic units, certain protective equipment and clothing, the big cost measures to the volunteer system. So how do we prevent it in the future? Long-term planning that kind of snuck up on us.
Thank you very much.
I'll make the motion that we approve the seeking of the grant that has been requested.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. Motion carries. Thank you.
Okay, I pulled number 4 because I really feel like number 4 should have never been on here to begin with. I realized I made a mistake at the last meeting by not pushing through and making that a full motion on holding the line on new capital improvement things, but it was a general understanding that we were not going to do that. So I understand the need and the want for a fire and rescue training building, but until we get into the budget, which was my whole reason for making that motion last time, so that we're not overspending and then have to raise taxes. And so this needs to wait, because priority-wise, those air packs are #1 priority. That's a safety issue we've got to address. If we don't get that grant, that's a large amount of money that we got to come up with. And it's easy to say we've got it in here. I keep hearing that, and then when we get down to the budget, we can't figure out a way to pull back on anything. So if I've got to make a decision between the fire and rescue building that we've been doing without, yeah, we want it, we need it, but it's way down below air packs. So, and I don't understand why this was even put on here when we said we were not going to do any more capital improvements until we were firmed up on the budget.
Mr. Chair, if I could address Ms. Culler's comments very quickly.
Yes, sir.
And my apology to Ms. Cullors if I misunderstood. I thought the comment was nothing unless it came to the board. And I thought I gave this as one of those examples that we'd advertise and receive the bids, but I knew this would have to come to the board, and the board would still be able to make that decision. I thought that was the intent of the discussion at the meeting. It's obviously something that I can't approve. It's over
Right.
$120,000.
Well, maybe I misspoke at the last one, and I thought I'd made it, clear that my intent was we didn't start anything until we knew where we were with the budget. So, this needs to wait, is my thought, because we've got to buy airbags. And I can't believe we've got a wealth of extra money, and we spend it, then we're done. So I think we need to wait. The grant comes through. The other issue is, and maybe I'm looking at it wrong, and you had a concern as well about the contractor not having Class A. So
The county does allow for a contractor to not be Class A as long as they are partnering with a Class A contractor, and the letter that was included in their bid did say that they had every intention to do so. The reason why they're not a Class A contractor is they do state and federal government work, and they're exempt from it, so they don't have to have that. While they're very skilled in the construction of these type of buildings, with the majority of their work being state and federal, they do not have a Class A, but have expressed that they're completely willing to partner with somebody that does.
So who would they partner with?
That would be up to them to submit the name to us, and then we would have to actually approve it before the contract is signed. It would be part of the executed contract.
Who would actually approve it?
We would have to go through building inspections and also our county attorney's office to go ahead and vet the Class A contractor to make sure that they're acceptable by all standards that we have. And once we got that, I guess Caitlin would basically be responsible for drafting the final contract that included the language.
It seems like we're a long way from approving this then with all that, as well as the fact that until we get this budget done, I'm not comfortable with it, even with all that, but certainly not with it hanging over us like that.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for Mr. Miatico. You know, at one point, it was discussed about a different style building being used. Was that not practical, or it was a self-contained unit, I believe? Can you expand on that?
So the project that we have here is utilizing intermodal sea containers, or Connex containers. This project is in
Can you turn your
lieu.
phone off, please? Hey, can you turn your phone off, please?
That's what I'm doing right now.
Thank you.
This project is in lieu to a brick and mortar training facility. This project goes as far back as 2009, when we underwent the Spring State consultant study of our fire and rescue system. The volunteer agencies, the chief staff, the county fire chief, all at the time expressed concern over our inability to train locally. We had 6 acres allotted in Rockland Park, where we had earmarked land for a brick and mortar training facility. A large shift changed in the state grant process to where the state grant did not increase enough to support the cost of the construction that it was intended, the grant was intended to cover. Most recently, Winchester City was awarded a grant for the replacement of their burn building. That grant's roughly $450,000. Their construction estimate came in around $800,000 for this center. So the cost match made it unbearable. So us looking at that and seeing a change in the state grant process, there's been a shift at the state level to where they are more inclined to fund maintenance and repairs of existing facilities and not fund new facilities. In addition to, the cost match would take it outside of our purview. So we traveled and we looked at a few facilities that use these sea container concepts. We felt that it met our training needs. In particularly, and Ms. Cullors don't want to hear this, but in particularly, it stayed within the budgetary constraints for us to fund that project out of our reserves or what we have saved through the process. So we're still looking at the Connex container to give us roughly 1,800 square feet of floor space for training, forcible entry props, windows, ladders, a roof prop, basically everything to self-contain our training needs right here in our hometown.
And where are you going currently to train?
Right now, we travel to Shenandoah County, Winchester. Our other option that just went into service like 2 weeks ago, Winchester City, Frederick County.
I think we brought that up at the presentation during the work session. You told us that, and I don't know how many of the staff, volunteers, go over those training things, but if they're in Shenandoah County and you have a major structure fire, that could be a big issue. Is that correct?
So to do a live fire training event, it requires about 18 personnel just to support that training event. That is from igniters to set the fires, to interior, exterior safety officers, compliance officers, instructor group leaders, down to people to take vitals. We do that with a mixture of career and volunteer staff to offset the budget. Mr. Carter is absolutely right. That drives our staff and equipment out of county. So if we do have a large-scale incident, by the time we packed training up, we wouldn't be able to leave the training grounds. Whereas here, we would be able to basically send essential staff off the training grounds and respond to the incident. If anybody remembers the Sunshine Inn fire, the motel fire we had on Royal Avenue, that's exactly what we did. We had a training event here at Bing Crosby Stadium. We used a prop at the stadium. We had a large-scale incident. We were actually able to take essential instructors, send them to respond to the incident scene, and we actually used the students on the fire scene to perform the salvage and overhaul, because we had 20 rooms to get everything out. So that became beneficial. Should we have been out of county, that wouldn't have been a practical scenario to do.
What's the cost to go to Shenandoah or Winchester as far as the hard cost if they get paid in and use their facility?
We're very beneficial, so there is no direct cost. What we do is we barter with them. You allow us to use your facility, we will send you a swift water instructor. So a capability that they don't have to support. So we do have a bartering agreement, but then we have the cost, that's at our cost. So we do have the overtime cost associated with sending that instructor or multiple instructors to that locality for 16, 32 hours, depending on what course we're going to teach.
Well, I want to make it clear. I'm not trying to tell you that I will never agree with you getting a burn building. I'm telling you until we know where we are with the budget, I don't know that we've got the money to do all this. So I'm going to get what's essential before dedicating close to $300,000 with, it's over 250 at this point. You don't know what the unforeseens are going to be, so you jack it up a little bit there. That's a lot of money. Those air packs have to come first. Now, I'm not saying that if once we get through this budget and the money's there, that I won't vote for this, because I understand it's a need. But we also have a need for firefighters at Rivermont when it opens. We haven't even discussed what that cost is going to be. So there's my dilemma. Like I said, I don't have a money tree. If anybody's got one, I'll be glad to come pick the money off of it.
So as for the money tree, we look at this project as, again, long-term planning. To address Mr. Mabe's concern of how do we prevent this from occurring again, this isn't a project that we pulled out last week. This has been a 12-year planning process, and we have been able, gracious enough by the volunteer system, to take that fire programs money and place it into a reserve. We feel today that going with, I'll give you 3 scenarios. Scenario 1. Scenario 1, we apply for the grant, we have matching funds in our training center. We would be able to support both of those projects without coming to this board asking for new money. We would be able to support that through our current balances within those line items. Scenario 2, we don't get the grant. We don't get the grant, we have to buy the SCBA's outright. Scenario 2 has 2 options. Option 1, we take the $250, we apply that towards the self-contained breathing apparatus as an upfront cost. We would still be forced to enter into a financial agreement to do a yearly purchase. We don't have the amount of money needed to outright pay for the self-contained breathing apparatus without asking for new monies. Or what we do is we go into the financial agreement looking at a 10-year plan at a low interest rate, we would be able to construct the training center and finance the self-contained breathing apparatus without coming to this body and asking for any new money. We would be able to shake our own money tree and not ask for any additional funds. If we take the training center money and we apply that towards the self-contained breathing apparatus for an outright purchase, then we would be forced to come back before this body and ask for a training center. The training center is a priority for our fire and rescue department, has been for 12 years. We can pay for it today. If we spend that money elsewhere, we would not be able to. Third option, eliminate the training center and use that money again. So if we look at it, we would be back before this body asking for funds. I guess in short, what I'm kind of explaining is that grant training center, we can afford. As no grant, financial agreement, training center, we can afford. Take the training center money, try to outright pay, drive the cost of the grant down, or the financial lease. We use the training center money, we wouldn't be able to afford it or not have it.
How often do you go train outside the county?
Right now, our training is very limited to our initial level training only. Because of the cost associated with apparatus usage, manpower usage, the only training our career and volunteer responders get at a county level is the initial level training. As a firefighter, I will train you, I will put you into a live fire scenario 4 times. You will achieve your certification, you will go back to your volunteer company, you will do in-house training levels, and the very next fire that you were exposed to is when the unfortunate event happens in our community. For some of our volunteers, that may be 1, 2, or 3 years before they ever get to see or hone those skills because we can't replicate it. The caveat, I'll put an asterisk on that, is if we get a acquired structure for live fire training. Unfortunate event, we tried to get the bank building that was torn down, we tried to get the motel building in Cheats, we just couldn't get those. So we have the unfortunate event that those are becoming few and far in between, that we can't reproduce live fire training on an annual, semi-annual basis.
But still, what's the number of how many times you've gone out in the past year for training? I think that's what you're asking.
Entry level or?
Just
In general?
In general.
You can give me a combination of both.
I would say our fire academy traveled to Frederick County, Shenandoah County, 7 times total to meet that entry level training program.
And you bartered the instructors.
That's correct.
And so really the only cost was just basic hard cost of getting the personnel there.
That's correct. And that is, by the time we set up, tear down, that's an additional 3 hours onto that training day because we have to meet the NFPA JPRs that requires 8 hours of training. So by the time we travel, by the time we get situated, we're adding an additional 3 hours to that volunteer training event that if we were here in our backyard, we would not be able to.
Okay, if you train your firefighters 7 times at a burned building and a fire came out, what are you really saving other than an hour's worth of travel time?
You're saving just that. In addition to, we are replicating skills. So it's more than just traveling outside. We're playing pretend a lot, if that makes any sense. So go to that window. I can't throw a ladder to the 2nd floor of a fire station and say, open that window with these tools. So we're playing pretend, simulating those motions. So we can enhance our training program. Yeah, we can offset some monies here. We can enhance our training programs by having that facility in our backyard. Yes, we're getting that training now. We're playing pretend. We're playing simulation a lot. I run out of pallets as an example to pretend that you're standing on a roof. We have to take a cinder block, set it on the ground, have you stand on a pallet simulating the pitch of a roof. Because I can't send you on a fire station roof and have you cut a hole. Whereas this facility would have a roof pop to be able to do that.
Well, I understand your need, I do. And scenario number 4 is, we hope you get this grant. You come back to us, and it's gonna be not that much longer. You waited 12 years, I don't think a couple more months is gonna be a huge issue. And then we see what we've got, and we go from there. I mean, to me, that's reasonable.
So, which I would agree, 12 months isn't gonna be detrimental to our training
No, I
program.
didn't say 12 months, I said you waited
Or-
12 years.
Okay, all
So a
right.
couple
Well,
more
let's
months
just say
until
another,
we get
let's
done
just say
with
another
that.
12 months by the time we go through the processes. Because the other factor is that we have, and we don't have an answer yet, because this came up yesterday, is will the contractor, who's the low bidder today, honor that price? We have to understand that the original cost projection on this project was $100,000, it grew to $130,000, and now we're at $250,000. We did receive the support of the chief staff with increasing that cost because of the importance of the training program. We also have to understand that this contractor bidded on this project as what I would assume a winter project. So if we put it back out in another 3 months, 6 months, is the cost of the project going to increase to where it becomes unsustainable? What I'm standing here telling you today is we can pay for this project today without asking this body for a dollar. I can't guarantee that in 6 weeks, 6 months. Can't do that. So.
I think you answered the question, and I was going to ask Ms. Ross that too, as far as, you know, whenever you find out how long will the contractor honor that bid. And I think Mr. Radico had explained that, and I know, or I think we probably all have sometimes, and I can think of a couple scenarios that's happened on this board, where you put it out for bid and the bid seems high, you put it out for bid again, it comes back even higher. On the flip side of that can happen as well, that you put it out for bid, the architects, engineers estimate it's going to be X amount, it comes back 25% lower. It just depends on what time of year, what the economy's doing, and all those things. I think that at last meeting, we did kind of make it clear that we did not want to see any new capital improvement projects. But I think it was also, at least my understanding, was that things that were already in the works, and this was one of them, would come before this board, and we'd have to have final approval on that as well. I know there's another capital improvement project that's circling out there. It's been going on for some time, and that's partnering up with the town. And I don't know if you all realize it or not, but we need some new audio-visual equipment because we can't hear anything today. So that's something there too. So I think we have to pick and choose. And the thing is with this particular item, it's within their reserve fund. To me, it's not really going to affect the operating budget because it's a one-time expense, the $250 or whatever it is. That's not going to equate, I don't believe, into any type of operating costs because the operating costs are ongoing year after year after year. I do agree with Ms. Cullors that it is important for the SPCAs. Yeah, SPCA. Yeah, I want to make sure I got the lettering right. But yeah, that's definitely an important thing, and we can't be guaranteed. That was another question, jumping back to that. We're looking for 105. Is it all or none? Are they going to come back and say we'll give you 60, or how does that work?
Typically with FEMA programs, they're going to give you all or none. They rarely come back and give you just a portion of the funding just because they know what kind of financial situation that would put the locality in.
Okay, well, the thought I had too was maybe we table this, and I don't know who'd be in charge of that, but I think we need to get a bigger table. But we're going to talk about the budget today. I think we're going to have a very good idea of
That's all I'm asking.
revenues and things like that. So what I would suggest, and then that's the main concern I have about putting this off, and that's if the contractor comes back with a higher bid. Instead of 250, it winds up being 3 or 3 1/4, and that was wasted money. So if the contractor would be willing
To extend 30 days.
extend it for
Well,
some
didn't you
time.
say there was a 30 to 90 day window? It came in January 16th, April 16th, 90 days. So we should,
I emailed Ms. Short yesterday just to check with the county what our standard is on that. and also emailed the contractor to find out if they would be willing to hold their price for an extended period of time, so.
And when do you expect to hear from them, or have they been turning your questions and answers around?
I just
pretty quick?
emailed them after our building committee meeting yesterday, so hopefully I will hear from them today. If I don't hear from them by mid-afternoon, I'll probably just call them. I had contact with them before the building committee meeting, and they're very excited about the project, so they may be willing, they may not.
Could we table this to our next meeting in March? And then if we have to, we can table it again. We should have a fairly good handle on what the revenue projections and such. Would that be agreeable?
That's all I've asked for all along.
Okay, that's a motion then.
I second.
All those approved?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you.
If I could just say very quickly, I apologize if you feel like I brought something before you that we said we weren't going to do before. My understanding is we weren't going to start any new capital projects, and this project's been out to bid twice. We had already received the bids at the time that that statement was made, and I just didn't feel it was prudent to just make the decision on my own to reject those bids instead of at least presenting them to you for consideration. So I apologize if it came off that way, but I was just trying to make sure we followed the steps if we did in fact decide not to move forward.
Everybody's input on it, we're not dedicated to it.
Thanks, everyone. A lot of good discussion. Item number 9, the authorization to advertise for public hearing, conditional use permit.
Yes, I just wanted to double check before passing that through that the items that I talked to you about, because I did go back and look at the video, and Mr. Foss had told one of the residents that he would not have pets. So I just wanted to make sure, because I thought maybe I'd see a new one here, and I didn't.
Do you want to update the board about what we're discussing?
Yeah,
I can do that.
I looked through and I didn't see, at the public hearing, the residents are opposed to the short-term rental and voiced their concerns. One of the things that was brought up was one of the residents had talked to the applicant and didn't want pets, dogs, that kind of thing. And she had verbalized that he said he would put that he would not have pets, but it's not in the conditional use.
So the planning commission recommended approval of this conditional use permit at their February meeting, and then this was the authorization advertised at the board level. So prior to the public hearing on this request, I can recommend those additional conditions and speak with the applicant about putting additional restrictions in this property management plan. So that's.
Do you want to pull this and not vote on this at all today, or how do you
Well,
want to do
since
that?
this is just the authorization to advertise, I would just suggest we go ahead with that, and then I have the additional 2 weeks prior to public hearing and then hopefully we'll have all that, I'll have all that together at the public hearing. Hopefully Mr. Foss doesn't have any objection to that. So it's the pets. Some of the residents, one of the residents was nervous about pets really off the leash that's coming out.
Right, and my concern, he mentioned, cattle and then the fence. I don't want to see anybody's dogs end up being shot by a farmer because they got over in their cattle. And fortunately or unfortunately, whichever way we look at that, farmers do have the right to do that if a dog is in attacking or an aggressive form towards their animals. So, and I'm not sure if he would understand that. It might be something we discuss with him as well. Because I'm an animal lover. I don't want to see anybody's. But that is a problem when you've got cattle and then people coming out of the city that don't understand that. They feel they've got an area that they can let their dogs run, and there they are chasing somebody's cattle. So.
Yes, ma'am. I will speak with them.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Sure.
There's all my questions already. So.
Okay, we need to approve this stuff.
Approve the rest of the consent agendas?
No, just
Or
this
this one?
authorization to
Okay.
advertise.
I move the board of supervisors, I'll go off my place here, number 9. Okay. I move the Board of Supervisors authorize the proposed conditional use permit for advertisement for public hearing.
Is there a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Nay. So carries. On our agenda is item J, which is the general public comment period with a 15-minute time limit. The general public comment period is an opportunity for citizens to give input on relevant county issues which are not on the board's agenda and is not intended as a question and answer period. Mrs. Mouse, has anyone signed up?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, James Harper.
Mr. Harper?
You all were getting close to my nap time.
Uh-oh, putting on your glasses.
Yeah, got to see. Get to that age. My name is James Harper and my address is 3658 Rockland Road in Front Royal. Mr. Chairman and Supervisors, congratulations to the new supervisors and to those who had the courage to run and did not win. Thank you for running. To the new Board of Supervisors, I'd like to recommend getting ISO 9000 certification. For those not familiar with International Standards Organization certification 9000, it would be an audit of the processes and documentation of our county government. This would ensure checks and balances and give taxpayers confidence that nothing like the EDA mess ever happens again. Many local, state, and federal agencies, as well as commercial businesses, have taken advantage of this process and hope you will consider this for Warren County. In August 2019, I sent in a FOIA request to Ms. Mounts and Mr. Stanley to get a copy of the roof project at Ressie Jeffries from Lance Construction, including cost specifications and so forth. Ms. Mounts would not give me a copy of the roof project. She made me pay a fee for her work. Mr. Chairman, I have a copy of what she gave me, and you can share it with
Thank you.
different supervisors.
Is this mine?
That is all yours. And no fee for it either. Mr. Chairman, I have a copy for you and for what Ms. Mounts gave me. I took the information out to my car and started reading and found that Ms. Mounts loaded me up with all kinds of other contracts, including playgrounds, stone walls, parking lot, watershed, and so forth. In the middle of what Ms. Mounts provided were 8 pages of the Lance contract. No conditions of the contract, no drawings, no specifications. I went back in and spoke to Mr. Stanley about the missing information. His response was that the work was done in the afternoon and only cost taxpayers an extra $30,000, and only a few times was work done at night. Mr. Stanley said he would ask Ms. Mounts to get me the additional information. I also told Mr. Stanley that I know work was done at night as they had light towers and anyone could see them. Mr. Stanley said work in the afternoon only cost $30,000 more, which I don't think anybody believes that figure. I've never said the school did not need a new roof. I question why it was done at night. Another one of Mr. Stanley's failures to manage. On December 6, 2019, I sent Ms. Mounts an email letting her know that I still had not received the information as of today. I still have not received the additional information. Ms. Mounts, since you like to quote the Code of Virginia, I have one for you. Pursuant to Virginia Code Section 2.2-3704B, you failed. In short, it says the FOIA information needs to be provided in 5 days. And also, Mr. Solik sent something to Mr. Stanley regarding this issue. And I'm sure Mr. Hand would be glad to verify that info. Ms. Mounts, I've noticed that you try and intimidate people by quoting the State Code of Virginia. When you quote the State Code of Virginia, the great thing is you can look it up on the internet. I've noticed that you reference these codes, and I encourage you to look up the meeting before referencing things that do not apply. If Ms. Mounts will not provide the FOIA requested information material on time, then she should find a different position in the county government. From what I understand, doing the roof work at night costs the taxpayers $500,000 to $1 million more than waiting a couple months and doing the work during the day. Either the school superintendent and the school board did not plan for the roof so the work could be done when school was out, or they just didn't care about taxpayer money. And in no way did I ever say the school did not need a new roof. Mr. Chairman and Supervisors, I read in the newspaper that you're going through budgets in the county government. I encourage you to take a look at the largest expenditure in the county government, that's the school system. The school board's behavior with the roof project, giving the superintendent, the former superintendent, a $12,000 raise in the middle of his contract. When he resigns and they pay him another 6 months, needs oversight. Hiring a firm to make up questions for potential new superintendent candidates when we have a personnel office qualified to do the job is a waste of money and just lazy in the part of the school board. We all want the second coming of a new superintendent. I'm all for spending money, helping students succeed, and paying teachers a better salary because they have an unbelievably tough job. I hope this Board of Supervisors will make it mandatory to approve any school board expenditure greater than $5,000. Mr. Stanley's, the county administrator's contract expires in June 2020. I suggest the Board of Supervisors advertise for his position. Mr. Stanley could apply, and the county hire the best candidate after several interviews. Hope the board will not get carried away in that position's salary and benefits, as was in Mr. Stanley's last contract. Mr. Chairman and Supervisors, does anyone sign Mr. Stanley's expense reports? Mr. Stanley keeps the Dunkin' Donut franchise in business, and I'm not sure why he charges the county for his coffee at Dunkin' Donuts. I could give you a list of questionable expenses if anybody cared. The new Board of Supervisors have a big job ahead of them, and I'm hoping everyone will help them. The blank check approach for the school board and EDA needs to stop. The county's lost millions of dollars of EDA money, and the chances of recovery are probably slim. The supervisors, current and former, who voted to pay their legal fees for themselves and others should be ashamed. Being on a board has a responsibility, not a deer-in-the-headlights approach. To the EDA, it's time to tear down the Afton Inn. How many more years will we have an eyesore on Main Street? An empty lot looks better than what there's there now. I always thought the EDA's mission was to bring in a business to help the tax rate and improve the community. Stop with the warehouses, call everyone at the General Service Administration, ask why Front Royal cannot get a federal agency to locate in Front Royal instead of Winchester. Quit funding the EDA for 2 years until they complete the audit for 2018 and 2019. Let the public know how much we lost. The old Stokes building on Main Street does not match anything on Main Street. The EDA should tear it down and improve parking. This is an eyesore for years to come. I've noticed lots of trash on the sides of the roads. I tried going out on warm days picking up trash. I picked up 3 sofas, 2 on Ashby Station Road, 1 on Fairground, 1 chair on Route 340 heading towards Bentonville. I'd also like to propose a spring and fall cleanup to help our roads, headed by our supervisors. Just picking up a little trash. I'm retired now, and if it's 50 degrees or better, I'm trying to keep 3 roads clean of trash. It's unbelievably how I can go do it 1 month and then come back 2 weeks later and I see it all messed up again. Yesterday I got 3 bags and only made it a quarter mile on Fairground Road. 3 full bags, and that's my limit, 3 to 4, and I'm done. In closing, I'm optimistic our bad government is behind us, and good things are ahead for Warren County. Congratulations to the Warren County and Skyline swim teams for another successful year.
Thank you, Mr. Harper. And do you have a copy of your speech? Of what you actually talked about?
Yeah, and I've also got the emails that I'll give you that have a copy of, you can have this one. I've got copies of, if you'd like, emails that I've sent to Ms. Mounts, and Mr. Solid has also emailed Mr. Stanley about getting FOIA requests on time. And I'm still waiting for that information. I still haven't gotten it, and I hope you'll push the button. Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the office that would like to speak?
So Miss Bonnie Gabbard also signed up, but I believe she has left.
Okay.
That's it.
Is there anyone else? If there's no one in the audience that would like to speak, it's final call. The general public comment period is now closed. The next item on our agenda is to go into a closed session.
I move the board enter into a closed meeting to discuss the performance and employment of specific local government personnel as authorized by Section 2.2-3711A1 of the Code of Virginia. The subject matter of the meeting is a specific local government employee.
Is there a second?
I second.
Is there any further discussion? Could I get a roll call, please?
Mr. Fox?
Aye.
Ms. Cullors?
Aye.
Mr. Chairman?
Aye.
Ms. Oates?
Aye.
Mr. Carter?
Aye.
We are now in a closed session. Thank you.
I move that the board certifies to the best of each member's knowledge only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements under Section 2.2-3711A1 of the Freedom of Information Act, and only such public business matters as were identified in this motion by which the closed meeting was convened were heard, discussed, or considered in the meeting by the public body.
We are now out of closed session.
No, we need a second.
Okay, we need a second, sorry.
Second.
Any further discussion? Mrs. Mounts, a roll call, please.
Mr. Carter?
Aye.
Ms. Oates?
Aye.
Mr. Chairman?
Aye.
Ms. Cullors?
Aye.
Mr. Fox?
Aye. We're now out of closed session. Entertain a motion. We're adjourned.
I make a motion to adjourn.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.
So